Get ready to start the clock and lower your expectations because I'm back with 2 more 10 seconds games today. My name is Graeldon and I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order to find the hidden gems among the piles of garbage, and today's games are 10 Second Shuriken and 10 Seconds to Win. Let's begin. I'm sure that the thought in everyone's mind is, what happens if you take last week's game, 10 Second Ninja, and put it in first person? No? Just me? Well, that's probably for the best, because spoilers, it's not great. Released in 2020 by Barjo Games, 10 Second Shuriken is a fast-paced first-person shooter cross-platformer that, despite being released 4 years after 10 Second Ninja X, somehow feels like it's much, much older, and not in a good way like cheese or fine wine, but more like milk. Now, before I get into the details of why, let's remind ourselves of what a good FPS platformer looks like. You've got games like Mirror's Edge, Dishonored, Titanfall 2, Neon White, and Mirror's Edge 2 that all use first-person parkour and use it well. Mirror's Edge in particular basically wrote the book on what a great first-person platformer should look like, and then games like Titanfall 2 and Neon White came along, corrected a bunch of spelling and grammatical errors, and then added a few extra chapters for good measure. Dishonored 1 and 2 took it in a different direction by showing how first-person melee combat and stealth is done, and Mirror's Edge 2 exists. So, what lessons did 10 Second Shuriken learn from all of these great examples? None. The answer is none. But you saw that coming. What I don't think you would have seen coming is that this game attempts to launch Steam VR whenever you open the game, despite the game not being VR compatible. Maybe it's a holdover from earlier in the development journey of the game, and good on the dev for being ambitious, but I'm personally glad that this didn't make the final cut. Going back to things that wouldn't surprise you, take a look at this amazing options menu. The devs evidently thought that putting options in a drop-down menu is a waste of everyone's time, and that using anything other than these 3 resolutions is something that only a loser or weirdo would do. No, I didn't subscribe to their newsletter, and no, I don't have a clue what code could possibly be entered here. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the actual game. Right after we get past this cute loading screen with a cat that tells you the premise of the game via chat windows for some unknown reason. This whole thing is the result of someone's artistic sensibilities, and good for them. I hope they never go into UX design. Right, WASD is used for movement, right click is a sword swing, and left click is used to throw a shuriken. You only have 10 shurikens per level, so you will need to use them conservatively. But in reality, you'll end up spamming them due to their hitbox being much smaller than the actual shuriken, along with them falling off so quickly that you'd suspect you were trying to throw a pancake rather than a deadly weapon. The sword is equally as woeful, cutting across the screen, not like a knife through butter, but rather like, well, whatever the opposite of that is. Look, if the game can't be bothered to put effort in, why should I? Movement, on the other hand, will make you feel like you're on ice, or rollerblades, or perhaps both, and it's especially noticeable when airborne, as your trajectory is largely locked in at the moment of jumping, with essentially zero maneuverability once in the air. All of this combines with a stupidly high mouse sensitivity to produce a somewhat nauseating experience that makes you feel like the most uncoordinated ninja suffering from bouts of muscle spasms midway through a mission. All of that is to say that the movement, aiming, and combat are not good. The icing on this cake of misery is that the background music has not just an audible pause whenever you restart a level, but it also tracks backwards by a few fractions of a second, resulting in you hearing the same few moments of music twice in a row. It's a bit subtle, but once you notice, you can't unhear it. And it's a shame, because the music is otherwise okay, featuring a lot of fast-paced techno with Japanese stylings and instruments, which fits thematically well with the fast-paced gameplay. Just like with 10 Second Ninja, each level needs to be completed in 10 seconds or less, and you'll earn up to 3 stars depending on how quickly you finish. There are 4 worlds, each with different themes, such as basic, desert, ice, and laser. Beating each world will earn you an achievement such as lasers, Ice Ice Baby, it's hot out here, and my personal favourite, beat World 1, with the description new_achievement_desk_4_0. It's the little touches like those that really make me feel accomplished, you know? Anyway, each of the 10 levels in a world will feature some platforming challenges, as well as these little goofy guys we'll call Larrys. They come in two variants, the normal placid ones that are just chilling until they get murdered, and then darker green ones that will fight back by sending fireballs in your direction. These fireballs are a pain because they will actually block your shurikens, so you might get thwarted even if you have a perfectly lined up shot. World 1 starts off pretty simply, introducing the basic mechanics. World 2 shakes things up by adding in falling platforms and a double jump ability. World 3 adds in moving platforms and a pickup that replaces your sword with a teleporter shuriken. It's a great addition, but not really used in any groundbreaking ways. The final world decides that one of the most fun things to do in first person is to try and make you estimate your size as you attempt to weave your way past lasers, all while equipped with a jetpack that allows you to fly around the stage. All of this culminates in a boss fight against an antagonist that we now see for the first time, King Squarehead. This fight is nothing more than a glorified round of whack-a-mole, and he was quickly killed by spamming all 10 shurikens available at once. I think it's safe to say that this boss fight was a complete letdown, much like the rest of the game. In case you can't tell, I wasn't a fan of this one. I think it had an interesting idea, but the execution leaves much to be desired. I think it's okay for there to be a certain level of jank in video games. It's why we think about things like the giants in Skyrim and their brute strength powered spaceflight program so fondly, but when jank combines with difficulty as a core aspect of the game experience, it's maybe time to pause and rethink things. Games like this are meant to make you feel like an unstoppable killing machine, not a geriatric grandpa trying to play disc golf. There were very few moments where I felt totally in control of my actions, and almost frustratingly, I don't think it would have taken much to fix these issues. Well, actually that's probably not true. Fixing the shurikens would probably be easy, just need to remove the gravity component and increase the projectile speed to make them more accurate and satisfying, but the movement mechanics would need a pretty big overhaul. From a design perspective, it's probably the movement that confuses me the most. You're making a game that leans heavily into precision in order to improve times by fractions of a second, and then give the player a movement system that is unreliable, floaty, and unresponsive. If anything, I would have preferred to lean more heavily into the movement and parkour. Give me a larger level with many pathing options to each Larry that needs to be killed. Change the timer to count up instead of down, and then allow the players to figure out the fastest path to kill all the enemies. So yeah, maybe more changes are needed than I first thought, but the fact that the mechanics are at odds with the game design still stands. And as such, this game simply isn't fun to play, and it could have been. And for $6.69 Canadian and 40 minutes of playtime, it needs to be much, much more polished than it currently is. So, with that in mind, my final rating for 10 Second Shuriken is a teleporter shuriken out of 10. Maybe I can use it to teleport myself into a better game. Speaking of, let's move on to today's second game, 10 Seconds to Win. Just for the record, I'm not particularly excited about this game, it just happens to have an exclamation mark at the end of the title, so it's not 10 seconds to win, it's 10 seconds to win! Keeping with the theme of the last few games, this is, much to the surprise of absolutely nobody, a 2D side-scrolling platformer with a 10-second time limit for each level. However, this one doesn't have any combat, making it more similar to one-screen platformer with a 10-second timer. 10 Seconds to Win was released by Vergiu in 2021 and is a relatively simple platforming game with a total of 100 levels to complete. The game starts in a windowed mode, so we head into the options menu to rectify this and notice that the only other settings are sliders for the music and sound and some language options. It's bare bones, but you don't really need anything complex for a simple 2D platformer, and the bright side is that everything looks and feels consistent in terms of the art style and presentation. Upon starting the first level, we're dropped right into the action with the most complex level I've ever seen. Thankfully, there is a tutorial sign that arms me with the skills required to beat this stage, and being the master gamer that I am, I managed to finish this level on the first try. And I know that it must be a difficult level because the game rewards me with an achievement for it. which means this must be the hardest game ever because every single level, all 100 of them, are worthy of an achievement. And I finished them all in less than 30 minutes, so I must be a god amongst gamers. Sarcasm and achievement spam aside, the core gameplay here actually isn't that bad. It feels like a combination of Super Meat Boy and Celeste, with relatively fast and precise movement combined with a multi-directional dash that can be recharged by grabbing orbs while airborne. They've done a good job of adding in additional hazards and mechanics too, starting with teaching the players how to jump, wall jump, dash, and then combining it all together. In the beginning, the only hazards are the bottomless pits, but others like spikes, floating platforms, springs, and saws soon make appearances to increase the difficulty. That said, things never get super hard. There were a few levels with springs that caused me some grief, simply because the movement wasn't as precise as I would have liked, but I think it all falls into that space of difficulty where there's nothing particularly challenging for a seasoned gamer, but that means it would also be a good entry point for someone relatively new to games. The 10-second timer isn't too punishing either, actually just creating a sense of urgency rather than challenge, which is reflected in the absence of star ratings for achieving specific times, which lowers the difficulty and frustration levels but also simplifies the game and sacrifices a lot of the replayability. If you've been watching the footage in the background though, you might notice something odd about the level design, like why are there spikes here? I can just fall down past them to the goal and avoid them completely. Well, this game does something creative that earns bonus points from me. There are actually only 50 levels, not 100. The first 50 levels have you play through in one direction, while the final 50 levels have you replay the levels in the opposite direction. Unsurprisingly to some, designing levels to be interesting to play through in reverse is pretty challenging, and the result here is pretty hit or miss. Some levels work well with equal challenge in both directions, but some are complete jokes, being able to simply jump from one side to the other. It's a neat gimmick and a clever way to squeeze more playtime out of your game, but I honestly would have preferred that rather than spending time and effort to ensure each level can be played in reverse, spend that energy on creating more challenging levels or hard mode versions of the original levels with extra hazards. As an idea, I think it has the right intent, but the end result leaves a bit to be desired. On a side note, upon reviewing the footage, it looks like the dev has hidden an emoji into the background of every level, like here, here, and here. It's a cute touch, even if it doesn't serve any gameplay purpose. One final thing of note is that levels 50 and 100 are much bigger than any other level, not being restricted to a single screen. Instead, it will scroll sideways, and there are additional clock pickups to collect that will add precious seconds to your ticking timer. There are also some alternative paths to take depending on your competency and confidence levels, which is a great touch and a lovely glimpse at what this game could have been if the dev wanted to cater to a higher skill ceiling. That said, there's also nothing wrong with keeping things simple. I think I speak for most players when I say that we're not fans of achievement spam. With each level taking less than 10 seconds to complete, you'll often be triggering a new achievement pop-up before the first one has vanished, which can result in some distracting clutter on screen. Personally, I prefer to get achievements for completing something challenging rather than for every possible checkpoint the game has, but I also understand why many games include them like this from a design perspective. I think that the most positive thing I can say about the achievements here is that at least I had to work for them rather than being spammed with them simply for having the game open. I also think it's funny that the global achievement percentage drops from 47.5% for levels 97 and 98 to 46.5% for levels 99 and 100, meaning that at least one player stopped right before the end of the game. That poor player has this game in their library, collecting dust, stuck at a total 99% completion. Achievements aside, everything else about this game is lukewarm, mediocre. There's nothing wrong mechanically, but it's not a particularly challenging game and it's over quite quickly. But it's hard to complain when the game only costs $1.29 Canadian. There's nothing particularly memorable about it either though, nothing to make you want to recommend it to someone else or to replay it in the future. The best I can say about it is that it would be a good starting point for someone new to gaming, but even that's a hard pill to swallow as the 10-second time limit is a design element that goes directly against that. This is one of the games where I wish I had a meh rating, but as we're keeping to how Steam allows users to rate games, I'll be giving 10 Seconds to Win a floating platform out of 10. It'll carry you through, but it won't support much more than that. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. Today's Larry was sponsored by Negi Malevolent. You could also become a sponsor by checking out the membership options below. As always, a massive thank you to all the channel members on screen for supporting the channel, with a special thank you to our Knight of the Holy Grail, Freaky Feline. Lastly, I want to thank you for joining me on this weird gaming adventure through the depths of Steam, and if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game. Until next time, take care.